Cliff, give me a thumbs up if you hear me. Got you. You're all set. Coach Steve, how you doing? Mama, you doing great. Welcome to episode 54 of the Positive Impact Podcast, where we talk about all topics relevant to the game that I love. I am your host, Terrell Dozier, and today's guest, special guest, excited to talk to him, assistant men's basketball coach at Georgia State, Mr. Cliff Warren.
There we go.
There you go, man. I
And
told you, man, it's a piece of cake. Don't worry
mod,
about it.
modern technology. Unbelievable.
I told you we family. We good. I'm gonna get you up on here, man.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you a lot.
I got you, man. It's good to see you, man. How are you and your family doing out there?
We're doing great, man. As you say, good to see you too, and it's good to be seen. My family's good. My youngest just woke up from a nap, so he's bouncing off the walls. And my oldest is riding bikes in the neighborhood, so we're good. We're good.
Awesome. And
Just trying to stay positive. That's all. Trying to
no
stay
question,
positive.
no question. And are things opening up a little bit more down there?
Yeah, Georgia is a little bit too wide open for my liking, but yes. Yeah.
It's probably a little too wide open, a little bit everywhere right now. But you gotta just take care of your own.
Right.
So,
But it's good.
I wanna get into your background a little bit, and talk about you a little bit before we talk about your involvement with Coaches for Change. And I want you to tell the viewers about growing up in Maryland. You know what I mean? Had a solid career at Mountain St. Mary. Kind of talk about how you got into basketball a little bit.
Let's see. Try to make this as less boring as possible. So 100 years ago, when I started playing basketball, I was fortunate to get a scholarship to Mount St. Mary's College. I played for a legendary Hall of Fame guy, Jim Phelan. He's in the College Basketball Hall of Fame. He is not in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, but he is in College Basketball Hall of Fame. Just a dynamite person. Again, when you're 17, 18, you don't really know what people are teaching you.
Mm-hmm.
But as you get older, you figure it out. And I was very fortunate to play for him for 4 years. I had a very average basketball career. And then I was fortunate to go and work in Washington, D.C. for IBM in the quote-unquote corporate world. I realized after about a year that I did not want to do that. Coach Phelan gave me the opportunity to come back to be a graduate assistant, work on a master's degree. 2 years after doing that, I earned a master's degree with a concentration in marketing. And I thought I would go back into the corporate world. My dad, rest his soul, worked for Exxon Company for 36 years. My mother, rest her soul, she worked for HUD in Washington, D.C., Housing Urban Development, D.C. government for 33 years. So all I knew was my parents went to work every day and they stayed in the same job for 30 plus years. So I thought that's what you do when you get out of college.
Right.
But when I got being a graduate assistant, I was around positive people. Don Anderson, again, he got me into college coaching, put the bug in my ear a little bit. And then after I got out of graduate school, I was a high school coach where I went to school at Paint Branch High School in Maryland. I was working for the guy who coached me in high school, Hank Galata. Taught me a lot about basketball, about people, about life. and I got that bug to get into coaching. Then I got an opportunity to go to Maryland Eastern Shore to work for a guy by the name of Jeff Mende. He's a West Coast guy. He took over the job for a guy by the name of Rob Chavez, who had left Maryland Eastern Shore to go back to the West Coast to Portland. Jeff Mende hired me. I worked there for approximately, three and a half months. And then a situation came up at Mount St. Mary's. One of the assistant coaches left to be a head basketball coach, Bob Flynn, who was Division III coach at St. Mary's in Maryland. My college coach called Jeff Mende, who I was working for, and said, "Hey, I want to bring Cliff back. This is his alma mater. I coached him, et cetera, et cetera." So right before October, I left Maryland Eastern Shore and went back to my alma mater, Mount St. Mary's College. I stayed there for 3 years. Had 3 successful years, coached some really good players. We went to the NIT, went to the NCAA tournament, and then I was fortunate enough to meet a guy by the name of Paul Hewitt. Paul Hewitt had just taken a job at Siena College up in Albany, New York. I was very fortunate to go work with him for 3 years. We went to the championship game in the MAC all 3 years. Went to the NCAA tournament, went to the NIT. Again, great fans, great support. And then I was even more fortunate to hang on to Coach Hewitt's coattails when he got the job in real life. He took me with him to Georgia Tech. I worked at Georgia Tech for 5 years. Very fortunate to coach a lot of good players, several professional and NBA players. And then I was fortunate enough to get a head coaching job at Jacksonville University in Jacksonville, Florida. I loved my time there. Wouldn't trade it for anything. Learned some valuable lessons about life, valuable lessons about myself, how to coach, how to mentor, how to teach. Won a lot of games there. My first year was not real pretty. Now that I'm long gone, and I can say it with confidence, we won 1 game my first year. We were 1-26. And then come the second year, we had the biggest turnaround in the nation. Very proud of that. And a few years later down the line, we won the regular season championship. And right after that, we won the regular season championship again. So back-to-back years, we won the regular season championship. We went to 3 postseasons at Jacksonville. But again, I think the thing that I'm most comfortable talking about and most proud about is we graduated 22 out of 22 seniors there. Very proud of that, and they're all successful in their own walks of life. I left Jacksonville after 9 years. I went to University of Maryland. Very fortunate to be there with a hell of a lot of good players, dynamite coaches. A lot of you guys know Mark Turgeon. He played at Kansas, played for a Final Four. He played for Larry Brown. He has an unbelievable coaching lineage. Worked with some dynamite staff members. I know that's your man, Bino. So you know Bino. You've had Bino on the show before. I've worked with some dynamite guys in the past. Then left Maryland to go to UMass up in Amherst. Worked there for 2 years for Matt McCall. And now extremely fortunate to be working at Georgia State, going into my second year with Rob Lanier. We joke around all the time. Like I said, many years ago, both Coach Lanier and I played against each other when he was at St. Bonaventure and I was at Mount St. Mary's. Didn't know each other then, but we did play against each other then. And then just after that, he got into coaching right away. Took me a few years to get into coaching. And ever since we've been in college coaching, we've been friends ever since, colleagues. We bounce ideas off each other. I've always had an extreme amount of respect for what he's done. Not only from a professional level, on a personal level. Being married to a doctor, raising 2 wonderful children. His son now, Emery's gone off to college to play basketball at Davidson. So, again, he is the total package, and I'm very fortunate to be working with him.
Absolutely. It's definitely a family staff at Georgia State. I know Coach K was on here when we first got on. I've had
Coach
Rob
K,
on.
you called him. Oh, nice.
Yeah, nah, you know what I mean. I
Coach
listen. I
K.
show love. I show love,
Coach
man.
Kreider. Coach K. I'm gonna have to use that. I like
Yeah,
that.
you know what I mean. So just make sure I get the copyrights to that.
Yes.
So I've had Rob on. I've had Coach Jarvis Hayes on here as well, and now you're on here. So I've been fortunate enough to get to know you guys during this pandemic through everything that I've been doing. It's a real honor to do so. Um, I wanted to talk about, some of the things that, have been going on, obviously, as a coach, with this pandemic. You know, you guys have had some obstacles as far as, like, usually during this time, in July, I wouldn't be able to talk to you right now because you'd be traveling the country right now. This is the busy time of the year. Talk about what it's like being at home right now as opposed to being in just every gym across the country trying to get talent.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm no different than every other college coach. It's different. It's uncharted territory. But now there are other event promoters still running events right in Atlanta that have been very successful, that have had high quality teams and high quality players. So I've been able to, get online and follow some teams and some players online the last, I guess, 4 weekends. There have been events. So that's been pretty good. You talk to the event promoters, you talk to scout and service guys to keep you in the loop of what's going on. But Terrell, there's nothing like seeing guys live
Mm-hmm.
to see and to gauge how good they are, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses. But the last couple of weekends, that's what I've been doing. As I mentioned, spending a lot of time with my family, which has been really good. Like I said, I got 2 young boys, so I want to try to love on them and pour into them as much as I can. My wife has been extremely understanding about what I do for a living. We celebrated 14 years of marriage a few months ago, so all those things have been a bonus.
Right. Now, no question about it. And, so not only do we have the pandemic, with the coronavirus and everything, but we also have gone through some things in our country. Most, the Breonna Taylor killing, the murder of George Floyd. First of all, I want you to talk to me about a couple of things. Number one, how Georgia State addressed their players when this social injustice stuff came about. And also, you saying that you have 2 younger sons. What was your message to your 2 younger sons?
Well, I'll start with that. I'll start with my family first. I have a son that's 11, JC. We call him Champ.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a son named Clark James. He is 3. So the 3-year-old just knows he can't go back to childcare. He wants to see his friends. But my son, JC, is going into 6th grade. He had I will say this too, an unbelievable teacher this past year, Miss Fanning at Bolton Academy. And she really educated a lot of her students on what's going on in the world throughout the year. They had their Zoom calls because of this pandemic. As we got into what was going on around the country, started to see a bigger voice about Black Lives Matter. My son started to watch a little bit more television. He has an iPad, so he follows things a little bit on his iPad. And just sitting down watching a few movies every now and then and just hearing him ask questions, I thought was really good. A few years ago when I was working at the
All right. Coach got kicked off. We're going to try to get Coach back on here. In the meantime, Trip, what's going on? George, what's going on? Coach Kreider, got to give you love, man. Got to give you love. I might have started something calling you Coach K down there. I got you. I got you. You're right about that. There you go.
Sorry, man.
Nah, no worries, no worries. So you said you was down at UMass?
No. So when I was at took my son when I was at University of Maryland. We took our team, I should say. My son went with me um, to the National Museum of African American History in Washington D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And we took our team. A lot of people took their children, and it's the first time I had been there. And just the moment we walked in, my son started to ask just the very basic questions of, why did this group of people treat Black people this way, Daddy?
Mm-hmm.
And, I tried to explain some things to him, but then after he started seeing pictures, Emmett Till's picture, he saw how slaves came over to this country. He saw how slaves were treated. And then you fast forward, if you will, and to see how people of color are still being treated.
Right.
And he just keeps asking those questions. And to have those conversations with my son, again, before we left the building, it brought a tear to my eye.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was hard for me to explain everything in a manner where he could understand it. But once we left, and certain things that we did after that, and I've always told him, since he can, remember, I've always said to him, hey, as a father, I want to make sure I challenge you in everything that you're doing, because this world, this society, unfortunately, doesn't always treat everybody equally. And I said, because you don't look like everybody, there'll be certain people that treat you differently. So I want to make sure that you are prepared and well equipped for whatever comes your way. And so I think the more I talk to him about that, the more he understands what's going on.
Nah, no question about it. And so, how did you guys address the basketball team when this happened?
Sure. So each week we've had a Zoom call with our team. Start maybe towards the beginning. We had a couple phone calls, and we just asked our guys, like, how are you feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what's going on? Have you heard these names? Every teenager now is on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and every kind of social media. These guys are wired to do that. So I think the majority of them had seen what was going on. And it was hard for them to explain their true feelings. Because, again, I think across the country, when certain things aren't happening directly to you, you think, man, that's sad, that's bad, it's unfortunate, but I'm okay. I still have a place to live. I still have a family. I still have a job, or I have a scholarship. So I think some of them really felt, hey, what's going on? And the more and more we just brought it up, I think each week, because there was something new that was going on each week. So we asked certain players to make comments. We asked our seniors to speak up. Excuse me. We asked our freshmen to speak up and tell us how you're feeling. I mean, we asked our guys to talk to their parents and just be informed of what was going on. And then midway through there, Rashad Brooks was killed right here in Atlanta, Georgia, at a Wendy's that's, I don't know, less than 3 miles from our campus. And our guys were now really, their ears and their eyes kind of perked up, like, wait a second, could really happen. So I think they educated themselves a little bit more. But every week we addressed an issue, and we asked them how they were feeling. Then we broke up into small groups, and each coach, you mentioned Coach Kreider, Coach Hayes, myself as assistants, we all FaceTimed our guys individually to find out how they're feeling. We've taken a step further and called their parents, called their loved ones, called some girlfriends, and to find out, hey, is this person on our team really doing okay? Is he just saying that? So I think the more we can just talk to them, the better. And now I'll fast forward a little bit. Our last Zoom call, we've tried to give our guys historical perspective. We had a Georgia State professor, Dr. Akinle Umoja. He's been an African-American studies professor. He was the chair of the department. He's been there for 24 years on our campus. He was a guest on our Zoom call last week. We gave our guys some homework. We wanted them to study the Reconstruction era. So from 1865 to 1877, what was going on? We sent them a few articles. We sent them some videos just to educate themselves. And we had a discussion about it. And then what we did was break out into small groups. And then what we did was just talk and discuss things. And the goal here is to give them a historical perspective. And hopefully by the time we get to November, they will have enough information so that they can say, okay, now that it's November and now it's time to vote. I understand the history of this country. I understand what I can and can't do. I understand what my obligation is. And I understand how I can make a change.
Nah, I like that. I like that a lot. So you got involved with an organization called Coaches for Change. Mm-hmm. Last Sunday, I had Dwayne Killings on from Marquette University, one of the 21 assistants from the Big East who started Coaches for Action. So I saw that happen, and then I seen there's been a Coaches for Change, and it's got coaches from all over the country. Mm-hmm. Number one, how did that come about? And number two, how did you get involved with it?
Well, I'll go back to Siena. I know you know Siena very well, but the head coach there, Carmen, and I go back a ways. Carmen and a couple other guys had some ideas, and Carmen did a great job of just rallying friends, if you will, coaches that he knows and coaches he's been associated with. So he tried to find a coach in every league, Division I league across the country, and just asked, hey, would you be willing to participate in this Coaches for Change? And, you talk about it on the phone. He had a Zoom call and explained the things that he wanted to do. And it's a wide variety. You mentioned Dwayne Killings and the assistant coaches there in the Big East. And it's all African-American coaches. Mm-hmm. Great job. I support them 100%. And I've talked to Dwayne about it and other coaches in the league. Coaches for Change is an even wider coaches perspective, if you will. Mm-hmm. Starting with college coaches in men's basketball. We have added women's basketball coaches, and now we've added strength and conditioning coaches. But again, Terrell, just like all of us in this basketball industry, we're all considered a coach. Mm-hmm. Whether you're a strength coach, whether you're a women's basketball coach, we're all considered coaches because we all have young teenagers, if you will, young adolescents that are at our disposal, that are on our teams, that we treat like family. So I mentioned my two boys, but again, there are 15 other guys on our team that I treat like my sons also. So the main goal for the Coaches for Change is to, engage. We're trying to empower, we're trying to educate, and we're trying to involve as many people as we can. Just like we're doing right now, we're engaging in conversation. Mm-hmm. People across the country are saying, hey, let's engage in uncomfortable conversations, I think, you mentioned what have we done with our team? Hey, we're trying to educate our players on what systematic racism, where it started, what it looks like. And now we're trying to empower our players to say, okay, well, how can I make a change? Maybe one way is through voting and then getting everybody involved, whether it's our players, whether it's family members, whether it's other coaches, that are in your circle or outside your circle. I think the more people we can get involved, I think the better. And, you doing this show and bringing things up like this and having a platform for people to speak. I think things like this go viral, and I think people start to listen, and then they get ideas. Since I've been with Coaches for Change, and I've heard a lot of coaches around the country just sending in new articles for us to read, different websites. And again, the more you hear different people talk out loud, the more it gets you to think. And it's been very rewarding for me because I've learned a lot.
Okay. Nah, no question about it. So what are some of the things, like, specifically as an organization? So as an organization, are you guys responsible just for your own teams? Are you guys looking to do something together nationwide? What are some of the ideas and some of the things that you guys are trying to accomplish with this?
Yeah, let me back up and say, if anybody's listening, and I don't know if I can type it in here, but coaches, the number 4, coaches4change.org is the website.
Yes.
If you were to go to the website right now, and I just pulled it up on my computer, it's interactive. So you can find articles about how to talk to your players. You can find articles about what happened 10 years ago or 50 years ago. You can find articles about voting. But you can actually go on this website, and I would say I think this is probably the number 1 goal of Coaches for Change. Again, we want to try and get all of our players and teams registered to vote. So this website, you can go to it, and there's probably 5 or 6 clicks, and you can register to vote. So if you're a player and you're from that particular city where you play, hey, you can click, put your information in, boom, you're a registered voter. You can also go on there, and if you're not registered in that city or that town, you can figure out a way to get an absentee ballot. And all this that I'm talking about now, and all these things are really self-explanatory once you go to the website. Again, it's coaches, the number 4, change.org. You know, Coach Lanier brought it up to our team several times that, you know, when he and I were in college, none of us knew anything about voting. You know, we knew who the president was. I think we'll all admit that. But I couldn't tell you who my council person was in my city or my town. I couldn't tell you who the judge was in my town. I couldn't tell you what they stood for either. I couldn't tell you their names. I couldn't tell you whether Democrat, Republican. I couldn't tell you anything because I was just unaware. I wasn't educated enough. So now what we've tried to do, not just at Georgia State, but with Coaches for Change, we're trying to educate our players on, hey, you're more equipped than we were when we were in college. So now if you educate yourself, you can make a educated decision based on factual information. You can go on our website and go and find out, hey, what does the Democratic person feel about human rights, about abortion, about homelessness, about education, about employment? You can look at a number of different things and say, okay, what does this candidate feel? What does this candidate feel? Does that align with what I feel? If so, that's probably a person you should vote for. Whether, again, in whatever system it is, the presidential, in your local jurisdiction. And I think that's really important. I think most people, and again, like I said, I was guilty of the same thing. When you're 18, 19, 20, you're 21, you think, okay, I know who the president is, but you don't know anything else. And you don't know that you're voting for other people. And some people will say, they're naysayers, they say, well, my vote doesn't matter. Well, you know what? If you take that attitude, well, there's a reason why we're in this position we're in now. I'll just say that. But I think the more people that get involved, the more people that care about what's going on, at the very least in their own community. If you care about the roads that are in your community, the streets, you know, the parks, the neighborhoods, if you're concerned about those things, then make sure you go and vote for the people who are running for offices that make things happen in your community, in your city, and in your state. I think I would encourage young people, especially, if you just do that, then you can make a difference in your own community. And once you start to do that, you can build yourself and your community up, and then maybe you can make a bigger difference on a bigger scale.
Absolutely. Nah, beautifully said. So you said, like, there's a different, you know, kind of group under the Coaches for Change umbrella. So it started off with the men's basketball coaches. You guys have now expanded to the women's basketball coaches, and then you've expanded to the strength and conditioning coaches. My question is, with all these coaches involved on the men's side and on the women's side, are you guys looking to have student athlete representatives in the under the Coaches for Change umbrella? Like, how important is it to you guys? You guys are engaging and educating the student athletes. Are you guys looking to provide them with a platform of their own under the Coaches for Change umbrella?
Well, again, I think all those coaches, men's coaches, strength coaches, and women's basketball coach, we're all under the same umbrella, and that is Coaches for Change. Mm-hmm. I think what we're trying to do with our players, I think respective of each team, mm-hmm. I think each coach is trying to educate their team. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think once we get closer to November, mm-hmm. the goal is for all the coaches who are involved in Coaches for Change to say, hey, I've gotten all 15 of our players registered to vote, and they're going to be ready to vote. You've seen the change that the NABC has made. They're not going to have any practice or games on November 3rd. This fall, there's going to be a national day to vote. I forgot the name they're calling it, the tag, the title. But with that said, we want to make sure we say, okay, on this day, all of you guys who are registered to vote, let's go ahead and vote that day. So I don't think we're necessarily having them come under our umbrella, but we are trying to educate them so they can do some things on their own.
Mm-hmm. Nah, no question about it. No question about it. And how's the response been? You know, and I'll just talk about, you know, obviously just your players alone. Like, what's the response been? Like, do they want to, are they looking to speak up more? You know, obviously, like, these guys have social media followings. They have followers on their social media platforms and stuff, and have an opportunity to make differences through their words and through their actions. What's their response to the education that you guys are providing to them?
Well, I can only speak for our team. I think our guys, the older guys on our team, are starting to realize, like, hey, this is going to become reality for me because I will be graduating soon, within a year, within 2 years. And then what is my next step to adulthood? What is my next step to being a leader in my community? What is my next step in being a man? And I think all those things are very important. I think a lot of our guys, like I said, in one of our Zooms, Coach Lanier asked our guys, like, hey, how many of you guys have voted before? Mm-hmm. How many of you guys are registered to vote? And you didn't see a lot of hands going up. And again, that's not their fault. And like we said, we didn't realize that when we were in college either, but we do want to educate them to say, hey, here are the reasons why you should participate. And I think every man, top to bottom, I think realizes that they can make a difference. I think sometimes our players, no different than anybody else's, I think they're not sure how they can make a change. I think some of them think, well, just because I do one thing, how does that impact something else? And we're trying to tell them, well, again, it has a chain reaction. If you start to do more, if you start to educate yourself more, if you start to get involved more, if you start to get more engaged, I think the better our, if you will, our world, our society will be.
Right. No question about it. So how do I want to ask this question? With your team, you know, with your team and what you represent, you know, not just as a father, as their coach, as a member of this group that's trying to evoke change, you know, across and like you said, educate and evolve with these children. What do you learn? What are you learning from all of this? Like, you know what I mean? Because we're never too old to learn. So
Sure.
We're trying to educate student athletes, and you know what I mean? But for us too, you know what I mean? This is kind of an unprecedented time for adults as well. So what is it that you're learning throughout this process?
Yeah, I'll tell you this. Again, maybe this is just an interesting fact. I learned this just the other day on our Zoom call with Professor Dr. Umoja, who's at Georgia State, who I mentioned. He told our team that if you're not a registered voter, you can't ever be called in for jury duty. You know, some people look at jury duty as, oh, that's a pain. And the way he explained it, and I thought, okay, this makes sense. So if I don't register to vote, and I never get called up on that jury, let's just say you have a family member or a friend who's on trial for something, all right, and they look like you and I, Terrell, and they look over to the jury and they turn and they don't see anybody that looks like them. If you're on trial for something, you're going to court, I think you want somebody over in that jury pool to look like you, possibly to be from the same area, possibly to go through what you've been through, or at least to have a sense of, hey, whatever everybody else is saying, throw the book at them, go to jail, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe there's somebody that looks like you that has some compassion, says, wait a minute. I've been through the same thing. I grew up the same way. And that's not the reason why this person did what he did. Hey, the evidence doesn't prove without a reasonable doubt that this person did this. Hey, let's have a discussion. So again, I just never thought about that. So the professor just said, hey, there's another reason why you want to make sure that you're registered to vote, because you could be helping somebody else who's on trial.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And again, there's several articles that I've read. I just read one this morning. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, NBA's all-time leading scorer. He wrote an article maybe at the beginning of the month, and he just talked about the history of what's going on. And, you know, he's been an advocate for a long time for social justice. And he's quoted a lot of people. He's talked about a lot of things, and just talking about how you cannot be silent. You know, John Lewis just passed away. And again, he talked about, you know, you can't wait. You can't be passive. You got to do things right now. And I think because of social media, because the world is seeing what's been happening for a very long time, I think everyone's outraged and everyone's had enough. It's not just African Americans, it's across the world.
So, coaches for change. You know, there's been, in my opinion, there's been a lot of movements. You know, there's been a lot of groups formed. What will make coaches for change sustain itself over a course of time? So, you know what I mean? So somebody might say, you know, are you just doing it, you know, are you just doing it now because of what's going on now, and then it'll fade away like a lot of other things did and a lot of other so-called movements have? Or is Coaches for Change here to stay regardless of when you coached your last game, there's people coming in behind you? What's the idea of the future of Coaches for Change?
Well, of course, that is the goal. I think if you looked at the website today and then you look at it in a week, you're going to see how it evolves and how it changes. And I think everybody on the call, Carmen especially, that was one of the things that we've all mentioned every week, sometimes twice a week. We're having Zoom calls, and everybody is making sure they ask that question: how can we sustain it? And I think the way you sustain it is by making it interactive. You're constantly updating things so that the people, that the more attention that we draw to the website, the more ideas that we can get, the more that other people bring up ideas. And like I said, having women's basketball coaches, having strength and conditioning coaches on there also, now we have a different pool, different mindsets, people coming from all walks of life. And I think that helps what's going on the site, but it also helps what's going on in helping our student athletes. And again, I think, I know we're in a pandemic right now. I know college athletics is a big question mark right now. But historically speaking, if college athletics goes the way it's been the last 10, 20, 40, 50, 100 years, there's going to be teenagers. There's going to be college campuses. There's going to be college athletics. So there's going to be a new group of guys every 4 years. So if we can educate those guys and they can educate their teammates, there's going to be new coaches, like you just said. There's going to be guys that we've all coached that get into coaching. And I think a number of guys that you've had on this program will say it first and foremost, one of their biggest gratifications in coaching is that the former players, a year later, 10 years later, they say thank you. You know, they've gotten into coaching. They remember what you said when they were a freshman. They take heed to your advice. So hopefully, generationally, it gets passed down on this is important. Hopefully, some of our players at Georgia State, once their time is up, they say, hey, I want to get more involved.
Mm-hmm. So Cliff Warren as a person, what's Cliff Warren's feelings on everything that's going on right now? And what does Cliff Warren feel like we need to do to kind of move forward with what we're doing? Like, how are you personally feeling? How has this personally affected you throughout this whole thing?
Yeah. Today, this is the end of July now. I'm a lot better than I was when everything first hit. I spoke to some family and some friends at length because I was not doing well at all. Mm-hmm. Not just with what I was seeing, but it was bringing up bad memories, if you will. Mm-hmm. And it brought up a lot of hurtful feelings, not just for myself, but some of my friends that I talked to. And it's more than just, African Americans being killed on video, but it brought up other feelings. And I think it's difficult for people to have conversations because most of us don't want to have uncomfortable conversations. Most of us just want to go on with our lives. Hey, I didn't say anything bad about you. Don't say anything bad about me. Let me just go on about my way. Hey, that doesn't concern me. That's across the street. That's not happening to me. But when things have happened to you or you've seen it firsthand, there's a feeling of, I don't know, lack of term. There's a feeling of just being upset. And it gets to anger, gets to frustration. And you see a lot of things happening that probably shouldn't happen. We're talking about college athletics. I've heard some guys on your show talk about what kind of opportunities can young African-American coaches have to become head coaches, to become administrators, all kinds of job opportunities people have talked about. And there are a lot of things that come up and you're like, man, I didn't realize this was systematic. I didn't realize this is how this person that I worked with really thought. Right. I didn't realize this institution that I used to work at, that's how they really thought. Hey, I didn't realize when I was not in college coaching and I was trying to get an opportunity to work in Washington, D.C., this is what it was really all about. Oh, and then the light bulb goes off. Oh, my mother and father, again, rest their souls, who were born in the 30s and had to grow up in the rural South. My father grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And, remembering some of the stories he told me when I was young, now I have one of those aha moments. Like, oh, this is what he was talking about. My dad told me, if you don't mind, I'm going to show you this quick story. My dad told me he was I forgot what he called it back then, but he was a bellhop, concierge at a hotel when he was in high school. And he said he was taking somebody's bags in. And, he took in several bags. He did everything he was supposed to do. He was sweating. And, most people were giving him a tip of $1 or $2. And again, this was, I don't know what year this was, in the 50s or the 60s, I guess, 50s. And then there was a gentleman there, a Caucasian man, who didn't treat him fairly, said some things about him, and then gave him a nickel. And my father said he let the guy walk away and he threw the nickel away. And I was like, well, Dad, why'd you do that? He says, he did that on purpose to degrade me. He said, I'm not going to be degraded. I did the job I was supposed to do. And everyone else before him gave $1, gave $2, and he gave me a nickel. And he did it on purpose to make sure to try to put me in my place. And so stories like that, again, they resonate in these times for me. And just seeing what's going on in our basketball industry, certain stories resonate with me. Certain coaches that really feel like, hey, they're entitled to certain jobs, whether it's in coaching, whether it's wherever. I think those kinds of things really get under my skin. And those are the things that I want to make sure I share with younger coaches, players, to make sure that you're really on top of things. I mentioned earlier about trying to challenge my son. in everything that he does, whether it's sports, whether it's exercise, music, whether it's math, reading, science, whatever it is. And, you know, he looks at me sometimes like, hey, Daddy, I already did 30 minutes of reading. I did my hour of reading. Hey, I practiced my flute for an hour. Can I go play? I'm like, oh, you know what? Give me another 15 minutes. Hey, you know, read one more chapter. Hey, do a little bit more math for me. Do a little bit more Spanish. And I'm trying to teach him again, because life isn't fair. You know, you're going to have to be above and beyond in certain circles to get the job, to get the promotion, to get whatever it is you're trying to get. And again, those kinds of things resonate with me. Like I said, you know, I went to graduate school to get a master's degree. Again, not really knowing why I was going back to school. I just knew the job that I had at IBM in Washington, D.C. wasn't for me. So I got the opportunity to get more educated, to get an advanced degree, so that my parents were like, okay, now you are well equipped to get a better opportunity, to create better opportunities for your family. And again, that's one of the things we're trying to do with Coaches for Change.
No question. Beautiful.
I know that was a lot. Sorry.
Nah, I love it. I love it. That's why we're here.
That was too much. Too much.
Nah, we share. Nah, that's great. That's great. No apologies needed. So as we start to wrap up, I want to hit you with some quick hitters. All right. So the first thing I want to know is, in your opinion, short-term goal and what you feel like the long-term goal is of Coaches for Change. So obviously you want to get, you know, we talked about the voting, but give me what the short-term goal is that you would like to see accomplished, and the long-term goal that you would like to see accomplished with Coaches for Change.
Yeah, I may be repeating myself here, so I apologize now. But short-term goal, I think all the coaches that are involved in Coaches for Change, we all want to get our team, 13, 15 players, registered to vote.
Okay.
Like right now. A lot of guys are back. A lot of guys are back on campus. A lot of guys will be back on campus at the end of August to start the school year. So we want to get everybody registered to vote. Short-term goal. I think long-term goal, and I mentioned it earlier, and you asked me the question about how we sustain this. As people would say, you know, it's not a moment, it's a movement. We want to keep this going for decades, so that the people behind us don't have to suffer like the people are suffering right now.
Nice. I like that. 3 people, usually I ask, you know, 3 people who you'd like to have dinner with and why. Give me three people who you would love if you had your pick of the litter. I would like to bring these three people in to help advance Coaches for Change.
Ooh, okay. That's a good question. My first one would be Muhammad Ali.
Okay.
Muhammad Ali, growing up, was my favorite athlete. I loved the way he spoke. I loved the way he carried himself. Loved the way he boxed. But outside of the ring, he took a stand. He dug his heels in the ground and said, here's who I am, and this is what I'm about. Right. So clearly, he changed the landscape of his own industry. And unfortunately, he had to give up part of his boxing prowess at the prime of his life to do something. And unfortunately, that's what's happening now. A lot of people have had to sacrifice to make a change. Hopefully, we don't have to sacrifice to make the change. But Muhammad Ali would be the first one. Again, I would say Barack Obama. I remember exactly where I was when he won. I was out recruiting. I was actually in Atlanta, flying from Atlanta back to Jacksonville when I was a head coach there. And I remember sitting in the airport. They were tallying up all the votes. When I landed, everybody was screaming and yelling. It was a late flight. There was nobody in the airport. And I just sat there and watched the TV. I sat there and I cried and I screamed. I got back home. My wife was awake. We just started cheering, calling all of our friends. The impact that he made in a lot of people's lives, not just African Americans, but people around the world. The way he carried himself, the way he treated people, the way he treated his family. I would love to sit down with him and see what ideas he would have for Coaches for Change, because I know, voting would be one that he'd probably say, hey, if it wasn't for young people voting, I might not have been president. So I think he understands the value of voting. Who would be the third? That's a good question. I don't know, but those two definitely. Those two definitely.
Okay, no problem, no question. So, Cliff Warren just finished his last game coaching. He's not coaching anymore. He's had a long career. I don't want to emphasize long too much, but you
You
what
did
I mean.
that the last time. You basically called me old. You
Nah,
called
you
me
an
an
OG.
OG. That
Listen,
means
yeah,
I'm
you
old.
OG.
All right.
You the OG. You OG. Right. So, what's the legacy you want to leave behind as a coach, as a person?
That's good. I think the best compliment I could get was just that I cared, and I served the players. I served the other coaches. I served the universities. I served the community and where I lived. I think that's the biggest compliment. If I could leave a legacy of serving and giving, I'd feel like I've done my job. I'd feel like I've done my job. Yeah.
No question about it. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you coming on here today, man, and sharing your stories and sharing your wisdom with me and my viewers today. At some point, things have got to get back to normal. Want to get down there and spend some time with my Panther family down there and see how things work down there. But Coach, thank you so much for coming on, man. I appreciate you, and we'll definitely be in touch soon.
Hey, listen, I do appreciate you, and this is 51, 54?
54.
54.
Yeah.
I've probably tuned into a handful. I've gone back to watch some. It's amazing the broad range of guests you've had on here. So I remember when you first were getting started, and I was like, hey, here's a suggestion. And it feels like that was like the last couple of weeks. But Terrell, you've done a dynamite job. I'm glad you have a platform to serve and to give others and let other people speak their piece. I think that's very important when you give people a platform to just speak, because then they can say what they really want to say. And I think that's been dynamite. You've opened the eyes and ears for a lot of people. So please continue to do what you're doing. I salute you. Thank you.
I appreciate you, Coach, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
My man.
All right.